Good evening. Today uh, is April the 18th of 2024. I hope everybody is having a good day. I want to pay tribute today to a friend I had known for over 40 years. I participated in services for him the other day. This man's name was Charles Dewitt. You can see by the way Charles looks. Sorry about that. I'm having trouble with my technology. Charles Dewitt was a Prince Hall Mason and Shriner. He lived in Fort Worth. This funeral program says in loving memory of Charles Ray Dewitt, born January the 9th, 1937, and died March 30th, 2024. According to his obituary, he was born in Fort Worth to Willie B. Dewitt and L.T. Ramsey on January the 9th, 1937. He grew up in the Fort Worth area historically known as Baptist Hill, ultimately graduated from William Terrell High School. And he was in the class of 1955. Charles proceeded to join the U.S. Army in March of 1959. He served his country for 3 years. While serving at Fort Dix and throughout his adult life, he was an avid basketball and baseball player. Although unable to pursue a professional baseball career due to injury, he continued his baseball play with the Fort Worth Warriors many years. Charles began his 37-year work career with Bell Helicopter Textron in 1962 as a contracted union worker, wrapping helicopter parts and ultimately moving up to management level as one of only a handful of African American supervisors in logistics. He proudly retired in January of 2000. On January 30th, 1966, Charles wisely married Mary Johnson. They spent the next 57 years in a highly spirited matrimony, raised 6 children. Also during this time, he was actively involved in Masonic and Shriner organizations. He was one of the founding members of the Rainbow Lodge number 446 in Fort Worth, held numerous titles and positions at Magi Temple number 45. He was most proud of being a founding member of the Prince Hall Masons of Texas Robert E. Conner Youth Camp. The annual youth camp gave boys between ages 8 and 17 the opportunity 1 week of every summer to participate in seminars, sports, swimming, and mentoring programs. Charles is preceded in death by Willie B. Dewitt, his mother, L.T. Ramsey, his father, and Norma J. Johnson, his sister. He is survived by his loving wife and dedicated wife, Mary, brothers Ronnie Ramsey and Lonnie Buggs Jr., Melinda Boggs, his sister, Melinda Buggs, Charles Dewitt Jr., son, Cantrice Dewitt, daughter, Phyllis Redmond, daughter, Frances Sandlin, daughter. He's also a proud grandfather of 6, DeAndrea Maxwell, Ernie Carter, Kelly Gibson, Loisetta Jimerson, Amanda Sandlin, Cameron Stewart, as well as a host of nieces, nephews, and great-grandchildren. I first met Charles at a funeral. This funeral occurred on December the 10th, 1982. I met him at the funeral of his wife's uncle, whose name was Charlie Brooks Jr. Charlie was also from Fort Worth. I've done a video about him before. Charlie was on December 7th, 1982. He was, let's see, here's his funeral program. Charlie Brooks Jr. became the first person in history to die by lethal injection. I've been opposed to the death penalty all of my life. And so I went to that funeral even though I didn't know Charlie, because I wanted to give comfort to the family and protest the death penalty. He converted to Islam while on death row and changed his name to Sharif Ahmed Abdul Rahim, meaning noble, praiseworthy servant of Allah. And his funeral was held on December 10th, 1982, 3 days after his execution, at the Fort Worth Masjid of Al-Islam, and the eulogy was given by my friend Imam Shakir Muki, who was nice enough to allow me to make remarks. The burial took place in Cedar Hill Memorial Park in Cannondale, and for the first time I got to meet the family, ex-wife Joyce Brooks and sons Keith and Derek Brooks, along with some other members of the family. And I walked up to Charles Dewitt because he was wearing a lapel pin that I recognized. It was the Legion of Honor from the Prince Hall Shriners, and I introduced myself to him. And I told him that I was a Prince Hall Mason at the time. I was living in Kaufman, where I was serving as pastor of Macedonia AME Church. And I had not yet become a member of the Prince Hall Shriners, but I told him I was planning on joining Zakat Shrine Temple in Dallas. And I didn't see him for another 2 years almost. It was in late 1984 that I had got in Zakat on November 14th of 1983. And then a year later, my wife Deborah and I attended the Potentates Ball of Zakat Temple. And a lot of the Medjay nobles from Fort Worth would come to our ball, and a lot of us would go to their ball, and it still happens. And I told him, if Charles Dewitt comes, I'd like to see him. And he did arrive, and he did come over to my table, introduced him to my wife, and reminisced about our first meeting. And I told him, when I met you before, I was not a Shriner at the time. He said, yeah, you said you were going to get in Zakat. And I said, you did. And since then, I've seen Charles at many different events, some shrine events in Dallas and Fort Worth, and some events of the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Texas. He was a very dedicated Mason and Shriner, and I always enjoyed being in his presence, and had a wonderful family. I had talked with, I think it was like January of '84, I was in Fort Worth, and I got his wife Mary on the phone, and she was able to put a three-way call to Joyce Brooks, and the three of us talked, and I later, visited the homes of both of them. Now, Charles and Mary's daughter, Cantrice, is an outstanding individual. At the time of her uncle's death, she was in junior high, and I have in my files a copy of a paper she wrote for an English class, dated April 9th, 1984, and it's entitled A Different Kind of Star. I hesitated in picking up the phone when I was told who it was. It was the first time I had talked to him in more than 5 years, He wasn't what they had made him to be. He wasn't what I expected. He talked as if he had been educated at Yale, had as many degrees as any of the famous scientists you would care to recall. We talked for about an hour. He called every day for a week, and we talked at least half an hour each time. I didn't think that week would be the basis for the rest of my life. This man told me which road to take at a fork in the crossroad that all people come to that one time in their life. He said he had been at that fork in the road, but took the road not traveled as much, and that made all the difference. The way he spoke, you would think you would never have known, but at the end of the week, end of our conversation, I quietly placed the receiver back in its cradle. Somehow knew that it would be the final time that I would talk to him. Some months later, on December 7th, 1982, my uncle was the first man ever to be executed by lethal injection. He didn't speak as if he were a man on death row, sitting and waiting to die, but hoping to live. This man, my uncle, gave me the life in which he lost and the philosophy he took with him to the grave. I feel privileged to have known him and for him being my uncle. For 1 week, I was a student being taught a different kind of subject by a different kind of teacher. He taught me to believe in myself. I guess you could call my Uncle Charlie Brooks Jr. a different kind of scholar. Cantrese got A++ on that. And I maintained contact with the family. I can remember in 1994 going to the Prince Hall Masonic Temple in Fort Worth. It was during the summer, and they had a Magi Shrine Temple had a dance in which they honored Mary Dewitt, Cantrese's mother, Charles's wife, a member of Magi Court, of the daughters, the auxiliary to the ancient Egyptian Arabic order nobles of the Mystic Shrine. Cantrese was not there, but her sister Arlene was, along with her husband, and of course Charles and Mary. And Joyce Brooks was there. I remember getting to dance with Joyce that night. By the way, later I ended up serving as pastor of Forest Hill AME Church in Fort Worth. I was there from 1999 to 2002. And Joyce visited our church on several occasions. We always enjoyed having her there. It was during that time, on December 17th, 1999, that I attended the School of Law hooding ceremony for Texas Wesleyan University. Among those to receive the degree of Juris Doctor was Cantrese Dewitt, who is now an attorney with a law firm in Dallas. This was held at the First Methodist Church of Dallas. And I was glad to be there and very proud of Cantrese, and her family wanted to show my support. And again, over the years at various Masonic and Shrine events, I have seen Charles Dewitt, and I remember, again, I don't remember the exact year this was, but one of the balls I attended, sponsored by Magi Temple, Charles arrived and his daughter was with him. He said, "You remember Cantrese, don't you?" And I said, "I certainly do." And I said, Cantrice, I'd like to have a dance with you tonight. And he said, sure. And so we were able to dance. Had a good time. Um, the It was in 2012 that we held on December 7th. That was the 30th anniversary of the execution of Charlie Brooks Jr. That we held a memorial service at the Riverside Community Center in Fort Worth. I had suggested that to Keith Brooks, Charlie's son, and he took the ball and run with it, and his brother Derek prepared a very good PowerPoint presentation. And then, sadly, on December 27, 2020, Joyce Brooks passed away. Her funeral was on January 8th of January 8th of 2021, so we were battling COVID at the time, and it was at the Greater New Light Baptist Church, Greater True Light Baptist Church, 3001 East 1st Street in Fort Worth. And I was glad to attend that service. I did a video, a tribute to Joyce. Joyce Brooks was just a delightful person, and we really do miss her. On December 10th, 2023, Deborah and I returned to Fort Worth. This was on the 41st anniversary of Charlie Brooks' funeral, when I met his son Keith for the first time. On that occasion, Keith was installed as the new pastor of Greater New Light. I keep saying it wrong. Greater True Light Baptist Church in Fort Worth, and I am very proud of what he's accomplished as a minister of the gospel, and wanted to give him my encouragement and support. I saw Keith again on the 16th of April of 2024, when he was involved in Charles Dewitt's service. We had the viewing, the visitation, and the Shriners. Here I am with the Prince Hall Shrine Group. Most of the people in the picture are members of Magi Shrine Temple in Fort Worth. I'm a member of Zakat Shrine Temple in Dallas. Later, a couple of nobles from Nubia Temple in Killeen also arrived. In addition to the shrine ceremony of burial tribute, there was one performed by the Consistory, the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite, and the Royal Arch Chapter. He was well loved because he contributed to so much and was such a great guy. And this is a picture of my wife Deborah and I, along with Keith Brooks and Cantrice DeWitt, part of a wonderful family that I've known and loved down through the years. I first met them as a result of a terrible tragedy and the death of their loved one, who was put to death by the state of Texas. I know it's very controversial, and many people in Texas support the death penalty. I do not. But I want to wish everyone a wonderful day, a wonderful evening, and I again ask continued prayer for the family of Charles DeWitt. He was such a great guy. I thank God for his wife Mary. I thank God for his daughter Cantrice and the rest of the family, and for Keith Brooks and the Brooks family. They're so closely related to them. And may God bless the legacy of Charles DeWitt, who touched the lives of so many people. Have a good evening.